Chapter 1. The First Death. Lazarus Cain first appeared in Dodge City, Kansas, in the spring of 1878. Nobody knew where he came from. He rode into town on a black horse with no markings, wearing a long duster coat despite the heat, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. He was tall, 6'3", and thin, almost gaunt. His skin was pale, unusual for a man who supposedly spent his life outdoors. His eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds, and he never smiled. Not once, not ever. He took a room at the Dodge House Hotel on Front Street and spent his evenings at the Long Branch Saloon, playing poker with the cowboys, gamblers, and drifters who passed through Dodge on their way to somewhere else. Lazarus was good at poker. Too good. He won consistently, methodically, without emotion. He didn't celebrate his wins or curse his losses. He just played and won and collected his money. On the night of June 14, 1878, Lazarus was playing five-card draw with 4 other men. One of them was a cattle driver named William Bull Hendricks, a big man, quick to anger, quicker to violence. Bull had been drinking since noon and losing since sunset. By midnight, he'd lost $300, his entire month's wages. "You're cheating," Bull said, his voice loud enough to silence the saloon. Lazarus looked at him with those gray eyes. "I'm not. Nobody wins that much without cheating. I do." Bull stood up, knocking his chair backward. His hand went to the Colt .45 on his hip. "Call me a liar again, and I'll put a bullet in you." Lazarus didn't stand, didn't reach for his own gun. He just looked at Bull with an expression that wasn't quite boredom, wasn't quite contempt. Something else, something colder. "You'll try." Bull Hendricks drew fast. He was known for it. He'd killed 3 men in gunfights and wounded a dozen more. His draw was smooth, practiced, deadly. He shot Lazarus Cain 6 times, center mass, 4 shots to the chest, 2 to the stomach. At that range, less than 10 feet, there was no way to miss. Lazarus jerked backward with each impact. Blood blossomed across his white shirt, spreading like ink on paper. He slumped in his chair, his head falling forward, his hat tumbling to the floor. Bull stood there, his gun smoking, breathing hard. "Goddamn cheat," he muttered. The saloon was silent. Everyone stared at the body, at the blood pooling on the floor, at the gray eyes that were still open, staring at nothing. Marshal Charlie Bassett arrived 10 minutes later. He examined the body, checked for a pulse, found none. Lazarus Cain was dead. 6 bullets, no heartbeat, no breath, dead. "Get him to the undertaker," Bassett said, "and Bull, you're under arrest." "Self-defense," Bull protested. "He called me a liar." "Tell it to the judge." They took Lazarus Cain's body to the undertaker, a man named Jeremiah Stone, who operated out of a small building on Chestnut Street. Jeremiah had been preparing bodies for burial for 20 years. He'd seen gunshot victims, knife wounds, hangings, drownings. He knew death. And Lazarus Cain was dead. He washed the body, dressed it in a clean suit, and laid it in a simple pine coffin. He noted the 6 bullet wounds, 4 in the chest, 2 in the abdomen, all fatal. Any one of them would have killed a man. 6 together? Impossible to survive. The funeral was held on June 16th at the Prairie Grove Cemetery, just outside Dodge City. About 20 people attended, mostly curious onlookers. Nobody knew Lazarus Cain. Nobody mourned him. They buried him in Plot 247, 6 feet deep, covered with prairie dirt. And that should have been the end of it. On the evening of June 19th, 1878, the doors of the Long Branch Saloon swung open. A man walked in, his boots leaving dusty footprints on the wooden floor. He was tall, gaunt, pale, gray eyes, long duster coat, wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. He walked to the bar and said, in a voice like gravel, "Whiskey." The bartender, a man named Tom Sherman, stared at him. His face went white. His hands started shaking. You're dead," he whispered. Lazarus looked at him. "I was." He drank his whiskey in one swallow, placed a silver dollar on the bar, and walked to the poker table where Bull Hendricks was playing cards. Bull looked up, saw Lazarus, and screamed, "No, no, 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 you're dead! I killed you! I saw you die!" Lazarus sat down across from him. "You did. Now it's your turn." Bull Hendricks died of a heart attack right there at the poker table. No wounds, no violence, just dead. His heart simply stopped as if it had been squeezed by an invisible hand. Lazarus stood up, collected Bull's money from the table, and walked out of the Long Branch Saloon. He mounted his black horse and rode south toward the Oklahoma Territory. Marshal Bassett organized a posse the next morning. They rode to Prairie Grove Cemetery and dug up Plot 247. The coffin was empty, but the lid had been opened from the inside. The wood was splintered, clawed, broken, and on the inside of the lid, scratched into the wood with fingernails, were words, "I am Lazarus. I rise."
Chapter 2, The Second Death. News of Lazarus Cain spread like wildfire across the frontier. Newspapers from Dodge City to San Francisco ran stories about the cowboy who wouldn't die. Some called it a hoax, others called it a miracle, most called it a nightmare. The U.S. Marshals Service issued a wanted poster. Lazarus Cain, wanted for murder, grave robbery, and crimes against nature. $500 reward. Approach with extreme caution. But how do you capture a man who can't die? Lazarus Cain surfaced next in Tombstone, Arizona Territory in October of 1881. He'd been traveling for 3 years, leaving a trail of bodies and terrified witnesses. He'd been seen in Wichita, Kansas, in Denver, Colorado, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, always playing cards, always winning, always killing anyone who challenged him. In Tombstone, he made the mistake of killing the wrong man. Johnny Ringo, gunfighter, outlaw, member of the Cowboys gang, one of the most dangerous men in the Arizona Territory. They met in the Oriental Saloon on Allen Street on October 23, 1881, just days before the famous gunfight at the OK Corral. Lazarus was playing poker. Ringo was drinking. They got into an argument over a hand. Ringo drew his gun. Lazarus was faster. One shot, right between the eyes. Johnny Ringo fell dead before he hit the floor. The Cowboys didn't take kindly to one of their own being killed. Curly Bill Brocious, Ike Clanton, and 5 other cowboys cornered Lazarus outside the Crystal Palace Saloon the next night. They didn't give him a chance to draw. They just opened fire. 20 shots, maybe more. Lazarus went down, his body riddled with bullets, blood spreading across the dirt of Allen Street. But the Cowboys weren't taking chances. They dragged his body to a cottonwood tree near the San Pedro River, about 2 miles south of town. They put a noose around his neck and hanged him from the strongest branch. They left him there, swinging, a warning to anyone who crossed the Cowboys. For 2 days, Lazarus Cain's body hung from that tree. His face turned black from the blood pooling in his head. His tongue swelled and protruded from his mouth. The desert sun baked him. The crows came and pecked at his eyes, his lips, his exposed skin. On the 3rd day, a rancher named Thomas McLaury, brother of the McLaury brothers who would die at the OK Corral, rode past the tree on his way to town. The rope was empty. Just empty. No body, no sign of where it had gone. The noose was still tied to the branch, but the loop that had been around Lazarus's neck was cut cleanly, as if with a knife. Thomas rode hard to Tombstone and reported to Deputy Marshal Virgil Earp. Virgil, along with his brothers Wyatt and Morgan, rode out to the tree to investigate. They found the rope. They found blood on the ground beneath the tree, but no body. What they did find was a set of footprints leading away from the tree, heading north, back toward Tombstone. That night, Curly Bill Brocious woke up in his room at the Grand Hotel on 5th Street. Something was wrong. The air was cold, too cold for October in Arizona. He reached for his gun on the nightstand. It wasn't there. A voice spoke from the darkness. "Looking for this?" Curly Bill struck a match. In the flickering light, he saw Lazarus Cain sitting in a chair by the window. His neck was bruised black and purple. His face was still discolored from the hanging. His eyes, what was left of them after the crows, were milky white. But he was alive, breathing, holding Curly Bill's gun. "You hanged me," Lazarus said, his voice raspy from the rope damage. You were dead." "I was. Now you will be." Lazarus stood. He walked to the bed. He wrapped the rope the same rope they'd used to hang him around Curly Bill's neck. "Please," Curly Bill begged, "please, I'm sorry. I'll do anything." "You can die." They found Curly Bill Brocious the next morning, hanged in his own room. The rope around his neck was the same one that had been used on Lazarus. The medical examiner noted that Curly Bill's neck wasn't broken. He'd been strangled slowly over the course of hours. And on the wall, written in Curly Bill's blood, were words, "I am Lazarus. I rise." Lazarus Cain disappeared after that. The Cowboys put out a bounty, $2,000 for his death. The Earps investigated, but found nothing. The Pinkerton Detective Agency was hired to track him down. They never found him. But people kept dying. In Tucson, in Phoenix, in Prescott. Always the same way. Always with the same message written in blood. "I am Lazarus. I rise."
Chapter 3. The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. By 1885, Lazarus Cain had become the most wanted man in the American West. Not for robbery, not for rustling, for simply existing. The Pinkerton Detective Agency assigned their best man to the case, William A. Pinkerton himself, son of the agency's founder. William had tracked down Jesse James, infiltrated the Molly Maguires, and solved dozens of cases that seemed impossible. But Lazarus Cain was different. "He's not a criminal," William wrote in his case notes. "He's a phenomenon. He doesn't hide. He doesn't run. He just continues. And anyone who tries to stop him dies." William Pinkerton tracked Lazarus to Denver, Colorado in the summer of 1885. Lazarus was staying at the Windsor Hotel on Larimer Street, playing poker in the hotel's saloon every night. He wasn't hiding, wasn't using an alias. He registered under his own name, Lazarus Cain. William watched him for 3 days, studied his patterns, his habits, looking for a weakness. On the 4th day, William approached Lazarus at the poker table. "Mr. Cain," William said, "my name is William Pinkerton. I'd like to ask you some questions." Lazarus looked up from his cards, those gray eyes, now fully healed from the crow attack, fixed on William with unsettling intensity. "You're the detective," Lazarus said. It wasn't a question. "I am. You want to know how I do it? How I come back?" "Yes." Lazarus smiled. It was the first time anyone had ever seen him smile. It was not a pleasant expression. "Sit down, Mr. Pinkerton. Let's play a hand. If you win, I'll tell you everything. If I win, you stop hunting me." William hesitated, then sat. They played for 2 hours. William was a skilled poker player. He'd used the game to infiltrate criminal organizations for years. But Lazarus was better, much better. Finally, William laid down his cards, a full house, kings over tens. Lazarus laid down his cards, 4 aces. "I win," Lazarus said. William nodded slowly. "You always do." "Not always. I've lost before. I lost my life 7 times now.
but I keep winning it back. How? Lazarus leaned back in his chair. You want the truth, Mr. Pinkerton? The real truth? Yes. I don't know. William stared at him. You don't know? I don't remember, Lazarus said. I remember dying the first time, in Dodge City. I remember the bullets, the pain, the darkness, and then nothing. Just nothing. For 3 days. And then I woke up, in my coffin, underground. I clawed my way out, and I've been here ever since. But why? Why do you come back? I don't know. Maybe God won't take me. Maybe the devil doesn't want me. Maybe I'm cursed. Maybe I'm blessed. I don't know, and I've stopped asking. He stood up, collecting his winnings. But I'll tell you this, Mr. Pinkerton. Every time I die, I come back different. A little less human. A little more something else. I don't feel pain anymore. I don't feel fear. I barely feel anything. I'm becoming whatever I'm supposed to become. And when that transformation is complete, I don't know what I'll be. He put on his hat. Stop hunting me, Mr. Pinkerton. You made a deal. Honor it. Because if you don't, if you or anyone else tries to kill me again, I won't just come back. I'll make sure you regret it forever. He walked out of the Windsor Hotel. William Pinkerton never saw him again. William Pinkerton closed the case file on Lazarus Cain in 1886. In his final report, he wrote, "Subject cannot be apprehended through conventional means. Recommend avoidance rather than engagement. Subject is not hostile unless provoked. Suggest leaving him alone." The U.S. Marshal Service agreed. Unofficially, they stopped hunting Lazarus Cain. The wanted posters came down, the bounties were withdrawn. They couldn't kill him, so they decided to ignore him. But Lazarus Cain didn't disappear. He kept traveling, kept playing poker, kept winning. And occasionally, when someone tried to kill him, and someone always did, he kept coming back.
Chapter 4. The Seventh Death. The seventh and final documented death of Lazarus Cain occurred in Deadwood, South Dakota, in the winter of 1890. Deadwood was a rough town, even by frontier standards. Gold Rush boom town, lawless, violent, the kind of place where Wild Bill Hickok had been shot in the back while playing poker, and where Calamity Jane drank herself to death. Lazarus Cain arrived in Deadwood in January of 1890 during one of the worst blizzards in Dakota history. The temperature dropped to 30 below zero. Snow piled 6 feet high. The town was cut off from the outside world for 3 weeks. And in that isolation, something happened. Lazarus took a room at the Bullock Hotel on Main Street and spent his evenings at the Gem Theater, a combination saloon, gambling hall, and brothel, run by a man named Al Swearingen, one of the most dangerous men in Deadwood. On the night of January 28th, Lazarus was playing poker in the Gem Theater when a group of miners accused him of cheating. There were 6 of them. They'd been drinking. They were angry. They'd lost money. They dragged Lazarus outside into the blizzard, into the freezing darkness, and they beat him with fists, with boots, with axe handles. They beat him until his face was unrecognizable, until his ribs were broken, until he stopped moving. Then they dragged him to Whitewood Creek, which ran through the center of town. The creek was frozen solid, 3 feet of ice. They broke through the ice with pickaxes, creating a hole about 6 feet wide, and they threw Lazarus Cain into the freezing water. The current pulled him under immediately. The water was so cold it would kill a man in minutes. Hypothermia, cardiac arrest, drowning. Take your pick. The miners watched for 10 minutes. No one surfaced. No one could survive that. They went back to the Gem Theater and celebrated. They'd killed the unkillable man. They'd done what marshals and outlaws and Pinkerton detectives couldn't do. They'd killed Lazarus Cain. For 3 days, the blizzard raged. The town was buried in snow. No one could leave. No one could enter. Deadwood was a frozen prison. On the 4th day, the storm broke. The sun came out. The temperature rose to a balmy 10 degrees. And Lazarus Cain walked into the Gem Theater. He was soaking wet. His clothes were frozen to his body. His skin was blue-white from the cold. Ice crystals clung to his hair and beard, but he was walking, breathing, alive. The 6 miners who'd thrown him in the creek were playing cards. They looked up, saw him, and their faces went white. "No!" one of them whispered. "No, it's not possible!" Lazarus walked to their table. Water dripped from his clothes, forming puddles on the floor. His gray eyes were colder than the blizzard outside. "You drowned me," Lazarus said. His voice was different now, hollow, echoing, as if it came from somewhere far away. We're sorry," another miner stammered. "We didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." Lazarus reached out and touched the first miner's forehead. Just touched it, 1 finger. The miner screamed. His body convulsed. His skin turned blue. Ice crystals formed on his face, his hands, his clothes. In 30 seconds, he was frozen solid, dead. Lazarus touched the second miner. Same result, frozen, dead. One by one, he touched all 6 miners, and one by one, they froze to death in the middle of a heated saloon while everyone watched in horror. When the last miner was dead, Lazarus turned to face the crowd. At least 40 people had witnessed what he'd done. "I am Lazarus," he said, his voice echoing through the silent room. "I have died 7 times, and 7 times I have risen, but each death takes something from me, my humanity, my warmth, my soul. I am becoming something else, something cold, something eternal, something you should fear." He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "Don't try to kill me again, because next time I won't come back as a man. I'll come back as something worse." He walked out into the snow and disappeared.
Chapter 5. The Transformation. After Deadwood, Lazarus Cain was never seen again. Not in any documented, verified way. But the stories continued. Prospectors in the Montana Territory reported seeing a tall figure in a duster coat walking through blizzards without protection, his skin blue-white, his breath creating no fog in the freezing air. Travelers on the Chisholm Trail in Texas claimed to see a man on a black horse riding through the desert at noon when the temperature was 115 degrees, wearing a heavy coat and showing no signs of heat exhaustion. Railroad workers in Wyoming swore they saw a man standing on the tracks as a train approached at full speed. The engineer blew the whistle. The man didn't move. The train hit him. But when they stopped to check, there was no body, just footprints leading away from the tracks. The U.S. Marshals Service officially closed the Lazarus Cain case in 1895. Their final report stated, "Subject presumed dead or permanently departed from U.S. territories. Case closed." But they didn't believe it. How could they? You can't kill a man who's already died 7 times. The Pinkerton files on Lazarus Cain were sealed in 1900 and remain sealed to this day. The agency won't discuss the case, won't confirm or deny anything. When asked, they simply say, "No comment." In 1923, a retired U.S. Marshal named John Slaughter gave an interview to a newspaper in Tucson. He was 83 years old and dying of cancer. He had nothing to lose. The reporter asked him about the strangest case he'd ever worked on. "Lazarus Cain," Slaughter said without hesitation, "the cowboy who wouldn't die." I saw him once, in 1887, in Nogales, on the Mexican border. I was young then, stupid. I tried to arrest him. He looked at me with those gray eyes and said, "You don't want to do this, Marshal." I drew my gun anyway. He was faster, shot me in the shoulder. Could have killed me, should have killed me, but he didn't. He just said, "Learn from this. Some men can't be stopped. Some men aren't meant to be stopped." Then he rode away. The reporter asked, "Do you think he's still alive?" Slaughter smiled. "Alive? I don't think Lazarus Cain was ever alive, not in the way we understand it. I think he's something else, something that wears the shape of a man but isn't one. And yes, I think he's still out there, somewhere, walking, waiting, becoming whatever he's supposed to become." "What do you think that is?" Slaughter's smile faded. "I don't know, and I hope I never find out."
Epilogue. In 2003, a long-haul trucker named Robert Mendez was driving through Nevada on Interstate 80, about 50 miles east of Reno. It was 3 a.m. The highway was empty. In his headlights, he saw a figure standing on the shoulder of the road, a tall man in a long coat and wide-brimmed hat. The man raised his hand, thumb out, hitchhiking. Robert should have kept driving, but something made him stop. He pulled over. The man opened the passenger door and climbed in. "Thanks," the man said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in years. "Where you headed?" Robert asked. "West, just west." They drove in silence for 10 minutes. Robert kept glancing at his passenger. The man's skin was pale, almost gray. His eyes were hidden under the brim of his hat. He didn't move, didn't fidget, just sat there, perfectly still. "What's your name?" Robert finally asked. The man turned to look at him, and in the dashboard lights, Robert saw his eyes, gray, cold, ancient. "Lazarus," the man said. Robert's blood ran cold. "Lazarus Cain?" The man smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You've heard of me." Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's not possible. That was over 100 years ago. You'd be dead." "I am. I have been 7 times, but I keep coming back. And each time I'm a little less human, a little more eternal." He opened the passenger door. The truck was going 70 miles an hour. "Stop trying to understand it. Just accept it. Some things can't die. Some things aren't meant to." He stepped out of the moving truck. Just stepped out. Robert slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop. He jumped out, ran back to where Lazarus should have been lying on the highway. Nothing. No body. No blood. Just empty road. And in the distance, walking west into the darkness, a tall figure in a long coat. This has been Mysteries of the Old West. The story you just heard is based on documented historical records, newspaper archives, U.S. Marshal reports, and Pinkerton Detective Agency files. Lazarus Cain is mentioned in at least 47 different sources between 1878 and 1895. Whether he was real, whether he truly couldn't die, whether he's still out there, that's for you to decide. But if you're ever driving through the desert at night, and you see a tall figure on the side of the road, wearing a long coat and wide-brimmed hat, don't stop. Don't pick him up. And whatever you do, don't try to kill him. Because some men can't die. Some men won't die. And some men were never alive to begin with.